Primarily what we're going to discuss today is the Raven new FlexGate Enterprise System, but keep in mind we do sell a lot of other products, and if you have questions sort of looming in the back of your mind about those, by all means, let's throw them out on the table. We can talk about it. As most of you know, Raven's we've been around since 1968. I'm the president and owner of the company. I've been working in the industry, not necessarily directly radio, since 1995 myself. We've been pretty active in the public safety and land mobile arena since 2002 or so. And what we have, I think it was about 98, for a satellite communications company, we were asked to do a, for lack of a better term, an interoperability solution for SATCOM, and just a way to sort of bridge new digital technologies in with old analog technologies. We did that in '98, deployed some systems worldwide at the time, and then we were looking for something new to do because the telecom boom sort of was at its end by 2001. And we said, well, let's really start focusing in on this particular market. And so we've sort of repackaged this system. This is what we call M4X multimedia, or multi-market mixed media. It's the second generation. It's a USB device. It provides connectivity to various types of communication systems. Those would be land mobile radio, telephones, VoIP, ROIP systems, you name it. This particular little box is so versatile, we can program it and make it into an 8-site analog voter. In fact, Bob has been working with Raven. He's actually on my board of directors as well. So he's got a lot of experience in the voter world coming from Raytheon. And I think he would agree it's a different type of voter than the SNV, but it's extraordinarily flexible. And that's kind of what led us into this new FlexGate world. And smartphone push to talk. So Raven, in the box, that same box there, created the sort of interoperability interface between the twisted pair wave solution and the Moto Turbo Connect Plus multi-site trunking system. And then we shipped that, I think, right around December 18th was last year's when that started going, and then 3 weeks later, TPS calls and says, hey, thanks, we just got purchased by Motorola. So that kind of left us in a bit of a lurch, like, uh-oh, we'd already been developing the NextEdge interface, and now we're thinking, what are we gonna do? We've kind of lost our push-to-talk provider. So Bob calls me and he says, hey, Brett, I got this, he'd been working with Twisted Pair as well, and he said, I found another push-to-talk provider. And I'm like, well, who is it? Because I thought I knew all of them. I'm sure other people did. And we came across, he kind of let me in on the big secret out there. There's a company called SLA Corporation, small group of smart engineer types that had created an enterprise push-to-talk solution. And they were kind of doing the traditional thing where they were deploying Raytheon gateways or what have you to sort of do the interop or bring that push-to-talk into land mobile radio. And I told him, I said, hey, I've got an NextEdge direct IP interface. I've looked at your system, and I think by IWCE, which was like 4 weeks away, we could do a live demo. And we did that. And now we're deploying systems to SMRs, and dealers, and counties, and so forth. We've got actually worldwide attention on this. Korea Asian Games is looking at this solution to put up next year and possibly have 60,000 push-to-talk subscribers over the course of 3 or 4 months.
On a single channel radio.
In this case, there's probably very little radios that they're going to do, right? And as we'll see, what I want you guys to just sort of get the slideshow doesn't really effectively sort of describe this. But what FlexGate is, it's the hub of a wheel, and then off into all the different spokes are these technologies, and just one of them happens to be the push-to-talk application. So we've white labeled the SLA app, which was known as ESChat, and it's now called Synapse PTT. So we've got our own Google Play Store and Apple iPhone, and that was kind of key to this market. Dealers and SMRs want to differentiate themselves they want people to know, hey, this belongs to you or to us or whatever, and they wanted it to fit within their same model of what they do, SMRs. So again, we're the FlexGate system. That's this black box over here, the larger one. It's essentially a server. Inside there is multiple VMs, virtual machines running Linux, and some Windows, and you name it, and whatever else may come up in the future, we'll put that on that system. And it's a subset of this little guy. Inside that is essentially a couple of blades, and the blades provide access to LAN mobile and IP systems and so forth. So we're focused kind of on the smartphone push-to-talk, and the reason for that is it makes it easier to sell the system. But as people are getting this, and we're going to see some live demos here, as they're installing these things, they're finding that the interoperability solution is significant. So I'm going to quickly go through the smartphone push-to-talk. I'm going to add myself into probably Lee County, North Carolina's FlexGate system. We're going to listen to some live traffic from Sheriff's Office and EMS and so forth. So Synapse PTT was based on the Enterprise Secure Chat. That I don't really know the history terribly much there. Do you recall?
Well, they did a job at Edwards Air Force Base for contractors, and that was a custom job, and that kind of rolled them into this. So eventually ended up with this, but that was their first foray into that area.
Right. So they were able to essentially take on full rights to the software they helped develop for someone else, and it's actually quite a bit in use, particularly with some of the spooks out there, where FBI and some of those other guys are using it. In fact, a lot of PDs are using it as a secondary communications tool, because every time they have to go pick up their radio, they're using a channel resource that has got a lot of value. Yeah.
I was going to mention there, Brett, that I was amazed when I first met SLA how many police forces were already using it, mainly in
a lot of
undercover. And,
yeah.
But I think one important thing from a marketing perspective is that they kind of all went through the IT door, not the radio door. And I had a lot of personal frustration, and some of you that worked with me, with the wave and twisted pair, because we were traditionally going in through the radio door, and some of the radio people perceive this kind of app as a threat to their power base. I was just interesting to see how effective SLA was in going in through the IT and the user, like detective people.
And that's sort of key there, is that we do not present this as a replacement to radios. We present this as sort of an augmentation or an ability for key personnel to be able to communicate with all their assets no matter where they are, and kind of and change. Lee County is a great example of that. They've got director level guys with the ES Chat, and they're on vacation in Michigan, and they're able to listen to their assets and actually talk into their systems. Every time I hit a push to talk on this particular device and talk to whether I'm talking to another smartphone user or to the FlexGate, it's AES 256 encrypted. And that's kind of a requirement, obviously, for a lot of the feds. There is no translation between that encryption and the LAN mobile side at this point, but that's something on the roadmap. So, like if I'm encrypted up to the box, I may not be if I go over next edge at this point. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, in some cases, people aren't too concerned about that.
Right, there's a question here.
Yeah.
How much bandwidth does it take for each device that's connected to the server? So, your bandwidth from the server point of, uplink is gonna.
So this technology uses a codec called the Opus codec, and so it's a variable rate codec. And so when there's a lot of bandwidth available, it takes up full spectrum. And I think the max was during a voice call, I want to say about 32K bits per second. And then as we're just sitting here idle.
Per subscriber, right?
Per subscriber.
Okay.
Per.
So if you have 100 or even 1,000 subscribers, you got to have a fairly substantial up and down one.
That's correct. And that's kind of important to note, especially for the SMRs, because that's all revenue generating bandwidth, right? So they need to make their money back on that, and that's an ongoing concern for them, is how that's going to work. But on the same side, it also lets them justify the cost, the price. So right now, one of the key features of the M4X or the FlexGate again is that we build interfaces. The software platform that's been developed on there is extraordinarily modular. So when we want to create a new interface, we don't have to just erase the board and start from scratch. We just add a new little module. We're creating, and we're going to go through some of those. We're creating a number of interfaces right now, and they go very quickly in development.
So if I'm a end user and I have the enterprise version, the SMR, the police department, but I want to give my wife a phone.
Yes.
Okay, can she download the ES chat, the basic version, and can I talk to her but also be connected to that? Or can we keep it completely separate so that way the SMR
Yeah.
always has value?
Absolutely. So like if Raven was hosting our own server, I can create sub-departments all day long, and I'm going to show you that with an SMR.
Okay.
And so we buy the licenses for the smartphone in blocks of 25. So and that's sort of just that was sort of the negotiation point for us to kind of get the ability to load all the server components on our box. We're the first people that are able to do that for ES Chat. So we pay the licensing up front for ES Chat on a yearly, annual basis for the subscription model. And then you guys, or the end users, or the SMRs and dealers, can pay monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever they need to do. So we try to keep that flexible. And so they'll have extra licenses, and they definitely are throwing in some family members and kind of having their own little groups and so forth.
Right.
So we have released the NextEdge direct IP interface, and we're going to be releasing many more as time goes on. You can also link up to, if you've got a site that's conventional analog, you can deploy one of these. This is essentially an NXU2 or an IP224 or something. Put this out at a remote site, ROIP backhaul to the FlexGate, and you've got access to those conventional radios as well. So, I guess you can see that okay. So at the core of the application on the smartphone, you have your contact list, and that's what we're looking at here. And there's a number of different accessories for, earphone push, BTT. Savox makes a really, really good speaker mic that's Bluetooth, and I wish I would have had the foresight to bring one of those, because it really makes a difference in some environments. Just by virtue of what the phones are, how they're supposed to work. There's laws about how loud you can have certain things on your phone.
Right.
So you're constantly dealing with volume perhaps on these, but if you get one of these external push-to-talk mics, it's not a problem at all. And in certain enclosed environments like in here, what I show you a little later will.
Talking about
should
the
be
unit
loud
you
enough.
had at the Kenwood meeting this summer?
Yes, I was there.
That little
Yeah,
ball,
that
that
little, yes,
was
that's
nice. That was real nice.
Stone Mountain makes one now too.
Yeah. So multi-use, we're seeing people use it, tactical field operations, they're using it just for monitoring, they're using it for director level, they're going out of town or whatever, and they may need access to their system. Mobile workforce, I think AMR, their primary system right now is smartphone push-to-talk, their backup is radio, and that's American Medical Response. There's a number of others. So again, it's an enterprise product, so there's management tools built in. Raven, by default in the subscription model, we offer, and most people accept it, basically 24/7 monitoring. We're checking the health of the system on a daily basis. We're doing online backup of databases, and all this happens under the hood. We don't have to bother the end user, the customer.
And you're hosting the server that controls all that?
No, they have the ability to host their own server, but we can reach into these devices if they give us access. And so far, 100% of people want that. They like to put it up, and all they're doing is adding and removing users, or putting assets into groups in the smartphone or whatever, and we'll see that. So we talked a little bit about the AES encrypted secure push-to-talk group. There's a messaging, there's a fancy little text messenger in here. We'll look at some of those screens. There is a PC dispatch for the client, but Raven's actually building our own. There's going to be basically a console dispatch interface to this system, hopefully in the next few months. Korea wants that by the 30th of November, but they're not getting it. Presence, that's kind of a cool deal. I know if your phone is on. I think it was Alex mentioning, hey, my guys I go and I'm gonna do a demo and I look and it shows everybody's offline. Well, you know, if they're offline, you can't talk to them. But you can see that before you hit the push to talk. Barge and alert calling, what that basically means is who's got the floor. If I've got a higher priority than the other guy, I can break into those conversations. And so people are using that and they're starting to understand how that works. Late join, if I go into a group call and I missed it because my phone was off, they may call me and then say, hey, you gotta get into this push to talk group, and I can actually join into that group after the fact. I think we talked about overrides, and then of course the land mobile public safety interfaces, which I'm going to get into. Yeah.
Speaking of late join, and it's all encrypted, but do you have the ability to record or save histories in the server, or is it always in the app?
Yeah, there's, and I haven't had to deal with this yet. I'm not sure exactly how to yet, but there's some potential of wiretap requirements, things like that, if the FBI subpoenas such a thing. And those tools do exist down in the server level for those that might need it.
But even, you know, if you're using this with the police department and they want a logging recorder, we'd have to sell them a blade and they can interface it in.
Yeah, or just any port on there, we can go.
Right, well, that's what I mean.
So one of the interfaces is a voice logging interface. We did a voice logging interface for for NextEdge already, and that's being included in here. And it provides call metadata to the voice logger. That's with Eventide, and we did it also with.
Alex, I was going to mention that, to my knowledge, you know, of course, they have logging recorders on every radio channel already by statutory law. But there, to my knowledge, there's no requirement for the offline unit-to-unit calls, and that's one of the reasons the public safety people really like it, because they can talk as they want to offline without going over the radio.
Interesting.
Okay. So here's some examples of the Android screens. What we see is, you know, by default it comes up on your contact list. This shows all of your people in the group, and it may or may not show radio resources. You have a choice as the person setting up these accounts. You have complete control over who sees what asset, or who's in whose contact list, or whatever. And you can disable a guy on the fly, and that's kind of the big differentiator between a lot of the other push to talks out there. You're not deploying, you know, boxes everywhere and then having it touch the smartphone service. It's one box and it's all completely managed at one location over IP, 100%. This is the group list, and that's traditionally where we're putting in all the radio systems, and a lot, because they're all going to be talk groups to some degree. Yeah, we can do some individual calling, but nobody's really finding a need for that, you know, as far as private calls and so forth into the radio system, although it's capable of doing that. The text messaging screen, it's a multimedia as well, so I can attach pictures and so forth. Can't attach videos yet, but pictures for sure, send them on. Here's a messaging list of all the messages you've received. Most people aren't using the messaging feature, I've noticed so far. And then the location and presence. You go to the map tab and you have a full list of all the people and where all your assets, who's in call, who's in do not disturb, for example, that kind of thing.
Can you click on the individual in
Yes.
that and PTT them individually?
Absolutely, and you see them when they're talking and all that. You can also enable in this particular version something called breadcrumb tracking. So if you've got a fleet type of system, you can actually track how fast your assets were moving and if anybody's went over the threshold and so forth. Again, people are like, hey, that's intriguing, but we haven't sort of gained the intelligence enough to actually implement that. But it's all in there.
That uses the phone GPS for the,
Yeah.
and can the user turn that off, or is it going to automatically turn it on with the app?
Yeah, so by default, the system can provision it so it's not, you cannot turn it off. And you know, there's also management tools for if you've got a whole slew of your own smartphones that belong to you, you can disable it there as well. But it is disabled.
Although you could turn off the phone and take out the battery.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Here's the iPhone screens. Nobody likes iPhones, so I'll just pass through these real fast. Yeah, it's the same concept, just a different color for the most part.
What's the, if you're gonna search for the app, what are you searching for?
On the Google
Or,
On the
iOS, Synapse PTT.
Can they do a black version of that? I see the white version for public safety as being totally obnoxious.
It is pretty bright. It's iPhones. And
Right, well, I mean, you may, if you're doing enterprise, you may want to design it around a darker.
black Raven screen, right?
yeah, one of the actual group options is something called surveillance. I don't know if on the iPhone how that works. I know it darkens the screen, things like that. So it's pretty interesting. But I would agree. Certainly, Bob and I will take that back to those guys. But so those are the other screens, and then same thing.
Same idea.
All right, and then of course, that's what it looks like on the iPad. It's very similar on the, like a Galaxy S.
Is there any limit to the number of talk groups you can create or the number of members on each talk group?
Yeah, it's a significant number. I have that data for it, I'll get you, but it's like thousands. Yeah.
Can we feed an XD and GPS data into this?
Eventually, that's in the works.
Okay.
Here's the breadcrumb tracking,
No.
the different tracking modes, receive signal strength, so on.
Orange County, very still.
And getting back to that question about talk groups, but you might want to touch on talk paths versus talk groups.
Yeah, so a talk group is essentially a logical asset that defines
Turbine.
a group of people all listening in a group together. And then a talk path is how many connections is it going to take to make that happen. So when I do a push to talk, and let's just say we're in our enclosed push to talk only network, not dealing with any radio assets, there may be a number of talk paths that are going to be initiated out of the system to make that happen. So if I've got if that thing's doing some interoperability between NextEdge and conventional and P25 and all that, that guy could be initiating a lot of outbound calls over your network, which each one of those, even though it's one call and I'm interoperating between a conventional analog and the NextEdge and all that, it's a lot of individual talk paths. Is that what you're getting at?
Actually, more about the, like in the trunking system, the limit of simultaneous.
So that's kind of a key. When we build out the system, we need to kind of know how many RF channels are associated. How many frequencies do you have loaded into your trunk system? That kind of helps us build the size of that, because this thing's doing vocoding for all the DMR, DPMR, and so forth. It's doing all the vocoding for the DVSI vocoder, the AMB. So we need to kind of know how many simultaneous calls into those systems are your users going to be making. And this can do hundreds if we need to. By default, in the 2 rack spaces, I can do 96.
Simultaneous conversation
Yes.
or interrupt connections.
Well, AMBE socket, so I can have a bunch of smartphone groups, but if I'm talking to trunk systems,
Yeah,
you have to
we start
load
getting
the
limited there.
AMBE modules into the blades.
Okay.
If you have an SMR that has both systems, say a turbo system and an NXDN system, 1 box or 2 boxes?
1 box. So right now, until we renegotiate with Motorola and get a direct IP into their Turbo Connect Plus and Capacity Plus, this particular box can also act as a control station interface
Okay.
right there in the same device. And that's exactly how Lee County's using it.
So we can do a turbo interface, but we're doing it through a
Through-
donor radio versus an
Right.
IP interface. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter, we're totally
That's
agnostic when it comes to the
Right
radios.
now, as far as that goes, it's analog audio on the output except for NXD and trunking.
And I'll show you how that's set up here in a few minutes.
Eventually, hopefully they'll do P25 IP so we can do the DFSI or CSSI.
Nice.
Eventually, maybe, hopefully.
Get so many options.
So the integration with LMR, there you go, perfect segue. Direct IP interface right now exists and is in use for NextEdge, Kenwood NextEdge trunk systems. We don't have a direct IP conventional, but that's kind of in the works. We're kind of going where the big systems are,
That's
obviously.
the one that
Yeah,
I need right now.
you need that right now?
Anytime yesterday is fine.
Yeah, okay, good, we'll be on it. Text Johnny back home, we didn't get him on that. LMR gateways, this includes the gateway. I mean, if I can pull this out. This has the assets for digital vocoding as well as radio interfacing all in the same blade. and I can put multiple blades in that box, and then I can link it to a cascaded box and have many more, and have hundreds of channels if I need to.
Can you pass that around?
Yeah. Start over.
That's just the standard
Don't copy.
blade.
That's the standard blade. It's what you're seeing there is the same thing as what's inside of here. Okay. I can also deploy these remotely, link back to IP on that. So now I have a distributed architecture, because not all your repeaters and control stations are going to be in one side. In fact, you may not even be under the RF coverage in one side. You need to remote it out there. So it's Legos for engineers is what this is. Future updates is Hytera DMR. It's already available. We have a Tier 2 DMR interface, direct IP, tested, and hopefully deploying here any day. We're looking at IDAS, been talking to those guys a little bit. They've actually been on some demos. So we just need to reach back out and see where they want to go next. Tetra, we'll be just having some discussions on that, I think, in the next couple of days as well. And then P25 down the road. But so far, everybody's pretty happy with P25 as on using control stations, because usually it's just one link into the system. But we'll see how that goes. And then, of course, all of our ROIP products are fully integrated into this. And so FlexGate Enterprise is all of these things put together. I'll just skip that slide, it's the same. So what is it? Again, it's a server. It's an enterprise server. It runs multiple virtual machines. It's got a little bit of Linux in there, a little bit of Windows, and all that kind of thing. There's a number of management tools that we have access to, that we can provide the end user access to. But as far as controlling their assets and who gets to talk to whom, the end user has full control over that.
If they own the box.
If they own the box. So interface types that exist today, and I think there's more, but local radio, this is donor radio type radio ports that are right off the box. You can also externalize them. Hytera DMR, Tier 2. The smartphone, next edge trunking interface. There's a VoIP RTP interface. There's a voice logging. The Synapse PTT again is the smartphone interface.
You can also do tone controlled consoles, so
Yes.
if you want to have a dispatch console tied directly in, just plug it into a port and you have
Correct.
controlled basic or consoles.
So other ones that are being worked on as we speak is a SIP interface. Now, when you start talking about, call control where somebody picks up a Cisco SIP phone and they have to dial a number, the workflow is very different from a radio, right? So the way that one's going to work is they're going to dial into the box, and then they'll actually have access to their radio resources then, and use like pound keying and so on. Tier 3 DMR, that's the trunking, so that's coming up. Hopefully getting started on that in the next few weeks. SpectraLink push to talk. SpectraLink provides thousands of products, and one of their products is a little push to talk phone that's also a SIP phone. So we're integrating with some of that. That's the Randolph Hospital. ClearCom, they have some Linux-based conferencing applications that we're going to be integrating into this box here pretty soon. We're also working on our own little dispatch console. So the dispatch is, right now, our code name for it is HQI, for lack of a better term. It's the headquarters interface. And it's just going to provide a more traditional dispatch type user interface that's going to be networked. So you basically are your externalized computer on an IP connection. Dana, this is kind of what you've been asking for years. So
What I've been asking for is even
what you want is even simpler, right? So voice logger for Eventide. We've already done it once. There's a lot of opportunity, especially in South America, for some voice logging with NextEdge. Tetra, and then also a analog telephone concept.
You talked to ICOM about interfacing with their IP100 IP phone?
Not
IP
specifically.
radio?
Not yet. We've talked a lot to ICOM, but you know how that goes. Yeah.
How many different the Ambi2 chips are you putting in there? Is it one for each technology, or is it?
No, so one chip handles 99 codecs. So based on the radio type, which you basically put into your system when you're setting it up, the system knows how to pick the right vocoder. So we have our little modules are three channel vocoders,
Okay.
and I can put 4 in a blade. In that box, I can have 3 blades. And then I can add another box that has 8 more blades, and I can add another box that has 8 more blades. So we've got extraordinary scalability there.
Okay.
Here's an interoperability diagram. What do you do? So, and then actually we set this up for a customer, we have Johnson. We had a FlexGate box just like that over here, and went through a control station over IP. We hooked into their P25 network, and they were literally in 10 minutes able to create a talk group between smartphone users and P25 assets. And they were blown away. To me, it was just like type a few things. How easy was that?
Sure.
You didn't have to stand up racks of servers and distribute them in different databases here and all that. It's all right there in the little box.
So basically, you can theoretically do what like an ACO to,
Yeah, we're compared to the ACU all the time, constantly. Yeah, this is the ACU.
I was gonna add, they're having a bit of experience with an ACU, that the one thing that this will be able to do is go protocol to protocol without any coming down to audio.
Never dealt with the ACU before.
No. I just put on my license plate for the heck of it.
Yeah.
So how do people buy this particular system? That's kind of the trick, right? How do you close on this sucker? And what we're sort of offering is just get an SMR or dealer. Hey Mars, welcome. You can come in if you like. Get an SMR or dealer to be interested. We'll give them that box, and they can try it for 30, 60 days. Once it starts paying for itself, no problem. The other way is we have our own hosted cloud. If all they care about, we can give them these little boxes that tie in through donor radios, and then they can go into I think almost everybody in here has this Synapse or ES Chat on their phone right now. That's our cloud, so we have host our own server. So there's a lot of ways, and basically, demos sell the product. But we have a couple ways. One is they can purchase it in the cloud. They would use our hosted servers and so forth, and then we deploy these little gateways everywhere and so on. That's okay, but it sort of removes the tangibility from it. People start wondering, what am I paying for here? But the other one is buy the appliance, if you will, the enterprise system. Now they own it, and they can buy that on a subscription base, which includes the subscription based is an annual fee basically for the smartphone licenses. You pay as time goes on as we add interfaces. Those interfaces are going to cost money. So for example, the dispatch console, you get a little license key that says the customer purchased 25 seats, and that price, I don't know what the price is, but let's just say it's a $199 dealer price or list price or whatever. So you'll have an ability to sell different interface types, smartphones. Some people aren't really they don't care about the smartphone, but they want access to the interoperability features. Some things are free. But with that, if you own that, especially on a subscription base, you're getting free upgrades all the time, and backup and all that kind of thing. So, and that one's self-hosted. They put it on their system somewhere on their network, and they can communicate to their different assets. So in the cloud, that's sort of what it looks like. We've got our smartphone users over here, the internet, Big I internet. They're talking through that over either Wi-Fi or LTE to one of our little blades into their radio control station, their radio resources.
That app that runs on your phone, does it eventually go dark once your phone shuts down, or?
No, it's always running unless you explicitly turn it off.
Okay.
This is the enterprise. So an enterprise solution is basically gives absolute control of all of your assets.
I think it's important to note that that blade though is more than one channel. I mentioned about the mini.
So we've got a mini blade, which is the same electronics, only hacked off, and it's just 2 ports, 2 channels. And I can put different modules in that mini blade. I can put our VoIP module in there, and that becomes literally a drop-in insert replacement to the NXU2. Or I can put the full blade. Now I've got 4 modules. I can have 8 channels, one of those being perhaps VoIP, and now I have 7 radio ROIP backhaul time. Super flexible.
There's a little less. You wouldn't put a voter license on there.
Sure, people do. We've got a lot of little 2-site receive-only voters out there. Absolutely. In fact,
How do you do 2 ports on a mini though?
So
Because you've got,
I got 2 receive paths and 2
If you're not
transmit
doing
paths.
both.
I can make those 2
oh,
receive paths
oh, okay,
do
so
whatever I
go
want.
off the same port. Oh, cool,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's pretty handy. I mean, Michigan had bought 200 plus of those at one point.
So you could actually take and put 2 channels at one site, 2 receive channels at one site, you know,
Okay.
one's at this site, one's at the site, and have a common.
Exactly, cascade
So
them, right?
if
So-
you're not doing transmit, read, broadcast, you're just doing receive, voting,
Yeah, it's-
on an 8-port blade, you could actually have, what, 15 receive paths and 1 transmit?
Well, I have 8 receive paths
Right.
total.
Oh, 8, okay, oh, I see, okay.
So yeah, I can split an
But I could
8-channel
do- but I
blade
could
into
do-
2 totally different voters
Okay,
if
I
I
didn't
want.
realize that, so an 8-port would not just be a 1-port transmit and 7-port receive, it can be 8-port receive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, any combination. Create different what we call vote groups. And it's all done over the DC.
What Brett, excuse me, what Brett just mentioned about the multiple channels in one board or one chassis is really important because one of the big cost drivers with the Raytheon SMB12 is the physical hardware. You've got 1 channel per rack. So this is really very cost effective.
Yeah.
Just be careful if you do voting, make sure they know everything up front.
Yeah, so, some of the things were different on the voter than say the SNV is, I don't like lease lines. On a voter, we want it to be, we really like good solid microwave, RF links, microwave links, whatever the case may be. Some of those lease lines back east, real pain in the you-know-what. So, but got a lot of voters out there that are being used that way. Because it's them, the cost compared to, I'm not paying 10 or 15,000, I'm paying 4 for 8 channels. So it's a no-brainer. So, they're willing to go in there and tweak their lease line every now and then, just make sure it's voting properly. We do have a lot of ways to sort of tweak the voting capability and deal with spectrum. So if you have different types of frequency response on your links, we can actually include or exclude different frequency layers in the voice band. So you can tune the voter to vote very well, even though it's highly disparate systems. We've got guys that are on Motorola over here and some other, run-of-the-mill, whatever, conventional analog here, and they're using it as one system.
Did you thought about putting AGC in it? So that you
Yeah,
could-
the new module, the 153 module has an AGC.
So will it just like listen to changes in the pilot tone level and
That's the intent,
automatically
yeah.
compensate?
Yeah, we got some big projects coming up that's gonna requires that, so. Getting back to the licensing on a per channel, so remember everything on the, right now, again, the FlexGate isn't the push to talk for smartphone, it's much more. But when you're talking about what's the recurring, how do people pay for that? It's tiered. We've got license bundles, 0 to 25 users cost X dollars per user. 50 to 25 to 50 is whatever. If you're hosting it in the cloud, on our cloud, it's pretty straightforward. 1050 on the first 1 to 24 users, it's 1050 a month per user. Okay. When you get up to 100 plus users, you're down to $7.60.
That's when you're hosting.
That's when we're hosting it. Okay. Most people they want their own box, and that's our intention. But this is a way for them to kind of maybe try it for a while, because we can do this month to month. If they want to turn it off in 3 weeks, we can do that. So it's less risk up front than say buying assets. These things cost a lot more. So let's see. The Enterprise is the box. This is the unlimited 5-year license. So some people are wanting to prepay for the lifetime of the product. They don't want to buy it in 5-year or 1-year chunks. And so in that case, they have some pricing where you buy it once and you don't ever have to talk to us again. We believe the subscription model is something that most people probably can budget for, or budget for 5 years of it. Ultimately, you spend just a teeny hair bit more over the course of 5 years, but you've got a lot more options to you available, because you're getting the free upgrades, you're getting the full online backup of all your databases, all that kind of stuff.
So this is user hosted, it says hosted
Yeah.
this, so they buy the box and then they buy these plan packs.
Right.
So unlimited 5-year, but then you have limits as far
Well,
as the number of subscribers.
Yeah.
So
That's how the license reads. So unlimited basically means you completely own it. It's not sort of I don't know how to explain it. Most people are going with the yearly concept and saying, hey, we can We'll just prepay.
Right.
So we kind of already talked about the hardware, so what time I got?
Quick question.
Question real quick.
Yeah.
Can you set up the smartphone, the Synapse PTT, to be monitor only or listen only?
Yeah, those are what they call unicast groups and so
Okay.
forth. Yep, absolutely. And that's a good point, because when I'm like monitoring like Lee County's assets, and that's EMS, and fire, and school police, and sheriff's office, and I get a call, if I accidentally hit PTT, I'm probably not gonna be very well liked.
Well, I'm just,
So-
if the reporters and the scanner folks and all that, they wanna have access, you can control their access,
Yes.
number one, but also you can say, yeah, buy this app, it's this much a month, and this is what you can do, it gives you this access.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We actually had a trunk system that went next edge, law enforcement, and all hell broke loose because all the
Yeah.
scanner jockeys, all the grandma and grandpas
Yeah.
called in and said, you're off the air, you're off the air. They got tired of taking the calls, they actually took it back to conventional.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, they
Wow.
were so
great.
overwhelmed by the people complaining that they were hiding from them.
Ridiculous.
So, as long as you gave them access, right?
So, see if I can get this.
Stream it.
So the list price of the server, the hardware components in the server is $67.50. Dealer price out the door is about $4,700. And that it doesn't really necessarily include the vocoders, so you have to pay a little extra for that. So I think most of the systems leaving Raven are going out for about $6,000 to $7,000 after you build the system out for the size. So like Radio One, I forget how many channels he's got, but it's a lot. It's like, lots of sites.
Right.
So we had to build that one out to such a degree. So I think they got 1 or 2 blades with enough vocoder resources to deal with that. But all you gotta do is call Kathy or John and they can build these systems out for you. And really, it boils down to, if you're a digital system, how many simultaneous talk paths are you gonna be required to handle? Well, 4-channel system, and whatever it is, they just do the math and we can build that up. Because after you use up all the vocoding resources, you'll get busy, but so far it hasn't happened. But you guys all have access to this particular, and if you don't already have this presentation, we'll get it to you. There's all the modules that go into these blades and that systems. VoIP interfaces, 2-channel, 4-wire analog, that's our radio interface. Hybrids, we have a conferencing we don't really use, that's for super large systems. Telephone interfaces get you access to, a regular handset. PSTN, that gets you dial tone from Montbell and so on. Relay modules, I/O interfaces, serial modules, and of course the DVSI. So based on what people need, and Alex has always got some customer needs something really strange, it seems like. I don't know if that's Alex, but certainly he brings up, and Dana too comes up with some crazy ones too, I don't know. But we have the ability to usually interface to most things.
Yeah.
So again, the modules fit inside. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 radio interfaces. Transform a couple radio interfaces. So I want to get in and actually show you some of the enterprise tools. We're good on time, I still think. Yeah.
Question real quick again.
Yeah.
Back there you said something about alarms. You had
Yeah.
a interface for alarms. Has this been thought about, or has anybody done it for like a silent alarm like a bank or any store or
Yeah.
anything? If you're a subscriber on this system, you can just use your smartphone for a silent alarm and it hits.
So
And it
those are-
automatically knows your location, it automatically knows.
Yeah, nobody's actually thought of doing it specifically that way, but the
Okay.
capability is there. So
Okay.
traditionally, Raven's more been kind of an engineering shop.
Right.
We wait for somebody to say, hey, we need to solve a problem. And then they tell us what the problem is, and then we design it around this hardware platform.
Mhm.
And there's hundreds of examples like that. This is the first time we're trying to get something that, because we love our MRs, I'm trying to give you something that's easier to sell. Because this black box, you kind of need to find those unique one-offs.
Right.
And it's hard, it's hard. Everybody likes the box and the concept because it's interesting. So we sell a lot of voters because in this industry, everybody knows how to vote. So, but if you have a specific need for that, all you do is sort of, the back of the lounge napkin, describe what the workflow is, how they want to use it, send it off to us, and you'll be amazed. 7 times out of 10, maybe more than that, we can provide a proof of concept within a few days, and then actually productize it thereafter if need be. So one of the interfaces, I'll just kind of go through the physical interfaces again. One of the key ones is the ROIP VoIP. It's basically a little server on a chip. It's like a mini little Linux server. And it provides all kinds of ROIP resources, voice recording, voice playback, IP backhaul, SIP, unicast, and all that. So it's kind of our powerhouse. It's actually integrated into a number of different products. So it can do a lot of different things. The 4-wire interface, this is what gets you into your conventional analog radio systems. This is your control station, donor radio access module, if you will. We sell a lot of those. We buy those usually in lots of 1,000, and they're usually sold, fairly quickly. FXO, this is your handset. It's just your old analog phone. I don't know. Believe it or not, there's still people out there that want good old sturdy desk phones. We're talking with a few different opportunities where they have ring down circuits where they pick up the phone and it automatically connects into a radio asset or whatever. The Ambi Plus 2, this is the other big one for us. We released this a little over a year ago, probably 2 years maybe. And it's, everybody may be familiar with the DVSI dongle that you need for, say, in Kenwood's case, the KS10. It's the same thing, except it's a 3-channel. And it also works over USB. These are all USB devices. So I can actually use that in the same way you do that dongle. But we've integrated it into the enterprise system. Chassis, talked about the mini blade. It's a terrible picture, but this black nebulous thing up there is a mini blade. It's about the size of a large coaster. It's a 2-channel device. Put any module in there you might need. The single blade is the 8-channel device. I can have 4 modules of different types in there, and then you program it through your USB connection to sort of give it a personality. And then the systems. This is a white version of that same box. And it's a 3-slot server, if you will. This actually has a computer and so forth in it. And we've got 8-slot and 16-slot expansion chassis. So scalability is there. We've got a few of these 16 slots out there. One is, for example, Suffolk County, New York. They've got a couple of big systems that's doing cross-busy, cross-muting. There's a spec sheet. We won't get into that if you need specs, but there you go. There's some of your specs that you need for today.
Brian sent me them.
So there's the slideshow. We're gonna actually log in. I'm gonna add myself to Lee County's enterprise system. And Lee County was probably our first deployment, and it's been a huge help to Raven because you kind of need to get the systems out there, work out all the bugs in a real environment. And those guys were awesome, and we appreciate them every day, Alex, when we see them. So let's start with, here's the whole page. I'm actually,
We're not seeing
that's Radio 1, isn't it?
We're not seeing it. Mentioned Radio 1. Radio 1's an SMR that has this, and he has himself added to every single customer's talk group.
So that he can monitor that.
So he can actually go in and select what customer's system to see if they're bitching about whatever. He can go in and listen to it.
Quality assurance.
Exactly.
So this is the homepage to the Radio 1 FlexGate system, and this is how they create their interoperability groups. Now remember, the FlexGate's sort of the hub of the wheel, and everything comes off of that. And he's created, as you can see, about, looks like 8 trunked channels into different customers of his. I think Ernst Kinshaw, I think is trucking. Radio 1 is the SMR himself. Red Oak, who knows, maybe it's, I don't know what all of them. And then they've got the Synapse PTT connector. So in this page, essentially you're creating all your interfaces. And then when you're in there, let's just pick Radio 1. I'll edit that one.
I just have a question when he's doing that. So he adds himself into every customer.
Yeah,
So customer calls in and says, hey, something's wrong with our radios, they don't sound right. He literally can fire it up, the monitor from his smartphone and,
absolutely.
wow.
He can search for any asset within his enterprise system and talk to anybody. He can listen to anybody.
He can say, pay your bill.
he can shut
You
them
can
off.
send a message, right? You can send out a message to the
Well, not yet.
admin.
Well, not to the individual radio yet, but
You can't send an individual private call message.
not to a radio yet.
So here's the radio one trunk side, and it may look fairly familiar. You got your console ID, your system code, your site code, so I can be multi-site. Network categories, IP address, and then over here is the list of all the other interfaces. This is how I make an interoperability group. I simply select the one I want, click add, boom, I'm done. So those two interfaces on the fly are talking to each other. So every time I push to talk on the trunked resource, I'm hearing it on whatever other resource I've just selected. It's that simple, and you can see who's talking to who by just kind of. Kenwood's got there. He's actually demoing for the Kenwood guys right now. Certainly somebody does. I don't know why those pluses aren't working here. But you can usually, when you hit plus, you'll see who it's associated with. There's some admin tools. I can back up and restore local settings and so forth. I can send in updates to this particular server. I can restart services if I need to. We can view logs. Ooh, he's a debug. Let's go to that one. We can pick the dates for the logs and so on. See if it shows up there. Maybe not. There we go. There's a bunch of logs. So, and I can set my network settings here. Once you've set this up, this is fairly static. You're kind of done. If I add a new customer, I can bring them in here. Sometimes on the fly. In Lee County, for example, they had a big narcotics sting operation they wanted to do. So they temporarily set up an interoperability group between a P25 system and NextEdge and some smartphone users. And when they were done at the end of the week, and the FBI guys and everybody goes home, they disabled that interface and moved on. So this is the sort of the enterprise solution. It's very straightforward, very simple to create interoperability groups. Once they get used to this interface, they're off to the races. We never hear from these guys. They're setting up and just doing their own thing. On the Secure Chat, the actual smartphone push to talk, you go through a different interface. It's on that server, but it's a different website. It's the push to talk app, and this is where you set up all your users. And here's Radio One's users. We saw those same guys. He's got some inactive demos going, some pending, so on. But I really want to look at this guy. So this is Lee County. I'm going to select the server. You see a lot of SLA-PTT.com. In order for us to get the encryption, we have to go through a certificate authority. They provide us with the certificate key that handles all the encryption between all these systems. So we're using CNAMEs, and right now that it's through an account through SLA.